Following on from a story we recently ran on Texas rebels threatening to raise the Confederate flag around a Martin Luther King monument, 2 white males were caught on surveillance cameras placing the Confederate flags on the ground surrounding the Martin Luther King Church in Atlanta. And the question is being raised over what, if any, crime has been committed and what charges can be brought about. Now, the Texas rebels we recently covered, they said that the American flag is actually more racist than the Confederate because it has been raised above 100 years of slavery. The Confederate flag just covers a 4-year civil war, and so they wanted to raise the Confederate flag to honor those who fought in the Civil War. They threatened to put it around a Martin Luther King monument. This is obviously a separate incident. This is over in Atlanta, but placing the flags around the Martin Luther King Church, it's being called a hate crime. It's being called a terrorist act, but attorneys are trying to argue that really no crime has been committed. Bob Keller, the Clayton County District Attorney for nearly 3 decades, said this. He said, "It was certainly divisive and not acceptable behavior the way it was done, but I cannot find a criminal act to it." However, Atlanta's FBI Joint Terrorism Task Force has been called in. They've been on the scene to determine if any specific threats were received, and the Reverend there, he really feels that this is a chargeable crime, a hate crime, a terrorist act, and he wants these people charged.
Well, by definition, and I think that what law enforcement should look at, hate speech, hate crimes in general, they examine the intent, and clearly the intent here, some could argue, would be to intimidate or to bully, which that would fall, under a hate crime. I'm sorry, but on the flip side of that, people living in that area, some people, they see the Confederate flag in a historic way. It symbolizes a part of their own identity, not necessarily in a racist way per se, but just simply in a historical way, and they're really clinging to this flag. Coretta Scott King and Martin Luther King Jr., very symbolic, symbolic still in death. And I don't know what the person or people were thinking in doing this, but the American Confederate flag, the Confederate flag, not the American flag, has sort of become America's swastika in a way. And the faster that people, even who embrace it historically, begin to realize that, the symbol that it represents of hate to a lot of people, I think that we'll start to see this dynamic change.
Yes, and this act, it is the last provocative act, the latest provocative act since the 9 black church members were killed in Charleston, South Carolina. And it has been clearly directed at a Martin Luther King area. This is a place that he was born in. It's near his crypt, a center devoted to preserving his legacy. One of the flags was actually put on the ground under a bell tower that says Black Lives Matter. So, this clearly, in my opinion, looks to be a hate crime. It looks to be very, very targeted. Just not very long ago, in the last 2 years, Confederate flag was placed at the tomb of Martin Luther King and his wife. So, the Reverend there, Reverend Warnock, he spoke of the incident. He said he's not surprised. We've seen this kind of ugliness before, but he believes that it is a terrorist act and he wants these people charged.
Right. Let's not forget, too, Martin Luther King Jr., we're talking about somebody who was assassinated, someone who embodies, being hated to the point where they were murdered. And I don't know what, again, it's difficult to really rationalize the concept other than hate. Why else would someone do this?
Well, it's intimidation.
It's a hate crime.
And we have to ask whether this is prosecutable as an intimidating act.
It's like burning a cross, the equivalent of the KKK burning crosses in places where, black neighborhoods were, or they understood a black community to be as a form of intimidation. This is sort of that same concept. In a way.
Well, in my opinion, this is at the very least another example of the just continuing gross behavior that it seems to be on the rise, especially surrounding the issue of the Confederate flag. What do you think at home? Is this a hate crime? Is this an act of terrorism? Or is this just worthless of being charged? Let us know your thoughts in the space below, and please keep watching the Lip TV for more.